Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Doug Bradburn, and I have the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of George Washington's Mount Vernon. And it is truly an honor to welcome you to this very special ceremony on this very special day. Today, 51 people from 28 countries all across the globe will officially become the newest citizens of the United States of America. Woo! And how fitting it is that we conduct this ceremony on the historic ground of Mount Vernon. For more than 40 years, this was the place that George and Martha Washington called home. And it wouldn't exist today without the extraordinary vision of the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, a group of women who led a national campaign in the 1850s to save this powerful touchstone of American identity for liberty-loving people around the world. This was done at a time not only when women couldn't vote, but when many of them couldn't own property. So these American visionaries invented historic preservation in the United States. And since the Mount Vernon Ladies Association saved this place and opened it to the public in 1860, more than 85 million people have toured this historic estate, making it the most visited historic home of its kind in the country. We welcome more than 1 million visitors a year, including 350,000 school children, people of all ages, from all walks of life, all races, creeds, ethnicities, come here to pay tribute to George Washington, to learn the stories that connect us to each other, and to say thank you to the father of our country for the service and sacrifice that helped establish the nation in which we now live. The stories of our founding matter. They bind us together. We are the only country in the history of the world founded based on an idea that people can govern themselves. And our values are embedded in the documents and the history of that founding struggle. They shape the potential of each of us, who we can call upon their lessons and the inspiration of that time. And let us not forget that one of those inspirational figures that belongs to all of us is General Washington, who served in the three most important roles in the founding of our great republic. Commander-in-Chief during the American Revolution, who persevered when the cause seemed lost, whose own personal courage and vigilance protected the spirit of independence in the darkest times of an 8-year-long war. Washington was, of course, president of the Constitutional Convention, which shepherded the extraordinary compromises. It saved the Union after the war, creating the fundamental basis of the principles of liberty in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which still govern us today. And Washington was the first president of the United States, whose character and judgment created a powerful office to establish law and order, and yet whose humility allowed the United States to survive beyond his time, free from the abuses of arbitrary power at the top. Now, for George Washington, the founding of the United States was always what he called, quote, a great experiment in human happiness under civil society. And you, today, are about to become part of that ongoing experiment to make a more perfect union. George Washington often noted that the decisions of his generation would affect millions unborn. We are those millions. And if American citizens were not entirely free and happy, the fault would be entirely our own. We are the inheritors of those choices, and we together will shape the world for countless millions. That is the gift and the challenge of self-governance. We are all in it together, and there's no one else to blame than ourselves. We have the power to shape our country, to be a great example of liberty under the law, more just and more free. Now, today's ceremony is a very important one, important to you, important to your family, and important to our national story. Welcoming new citizens from distant and foreign lands is an ideal born at the founding. And today you recreate the revolutionary action of America's founding generation to freely choose to join a new nation, the United States of America. It was the same choice George Washington made. He wasn't born a citizen of the United States of America. And there could be no more appropriate place for a ceremony such as this than at the home of our country's most famous founding father, and no more appropriate day than on Independence Day. I envy you this exciting moment. You get to be born again in liberty today on the birthday of America. Now, we're thrilled that you're here at Mount Vernon, and we provided in your packets a free membership for your family to be part of Mount Vernon for the next year. We hope you come and take advantage of that and learn more stories and visit this place as much as you can. Before we rise for our national anthem, I would like to thank the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service for their continued partnership. Thank you, Ms. Moody and Ms. Zanotti. I would also like to thank the George Washington chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution and the Mount Vernon chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution for their strong support of Mount Vernon and their support of this program today. I'd like to acknowledge the presence here today of Kathy Tran, representative of District 42 in Virginia's House of Delegates. Delegate Tran is back there. She's great. Delegate Tran fled Vietnam with her parents when she was only 7 months old, and she has devoted her career to ensuring that all working families have the opportunity to achieve the American dream. Welcome, Delegate Tran, who's here with her wonderful family today. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Kimberly Zanotti. Ms. Zanotti serves as the Washington Field Office Director for the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services and has almost 26 years of experience with Immigration and Naturalization Service and the USCIS. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Zanotti.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Bradburn, for welcoming us all here today. As he said, my name is Kimberly Zanotti, and I have the privilege of serving as the USCIS Washington Field Office Director for the USCIS office in Fairfax. It is my pleasure to welcome you candidates for naturalization, as well as your family, friends, and guests to today's special ceremony here at George and Martha Washington's Mount Vernon. I also want to thank the wonderful team here at Mount Vernon for hosting us on this very special day. Now, to officially begin our ceremony, I would like to ask everyone to please rise and place your right hand over your heart for the national anthem. Please welcome the talented vocalist and recording artist, Jessica Lynn.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Jessica. That was beautiful. Everyone, please be seated. Now, it is my distinct privilege to introduce my colleague, Victoria Moody, Section Chief of the Washington Field Office of USCIS. She has the distinct privilege of calling the countries and presenting the candidates for naturalization.
Thank you, Kimberly, and good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with you all today. When you hear your country of nationality called, please stand and remain standing for the oath of allegiance. Afghanistan, Algeria, Argentina, Bangladesh, Bolivia, Canada, China, Egypt, El Salvador, Ethiopia, Ghana, Honduras, India, Iran, Mexico, Moldova, Morocco, Nepal, New Zealand, Nicaragua, Peru, Philippines, Romania, South Africa, South Korea, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Vietnam. Is there any country that I did not call? All right. Ms. Zanotti, I present to you 51 candidates representing 28 countries who have applied to become citizens of the United States. Each of the candidates has been interviewed by an officer of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, unless exempted by the law, has demonstrated the ability to read, write, and speak words of the English language. Each has demonstrated his or her knowledge and understanding of the history and of the principles and form of government of the United States. Ms. Zanotti, I recommend that these candidates be administered the oath of allegiance, thereby admitting them to United States citizenship.
All right, candidates, are you ready? You're going to raise your right hand, and you will be repeating after me. I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform non-combatant service in the armed forces of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, so help me God. Congratulations, you are America's newest citizens on our anniversary. Great job. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Please be seated. So it is an honor for me to be the first to address you as my fellow Americans and to be with you on this milestone day in your lives. As we celebrate our nation's 243rd birthday, it is fitting that we welcome you, our newest citizens, here at the home of our nation's first president and most notable founding father, George Washington. Each year, USCIS welcomes thousands of new citizens with special naturalization ceremonies just like this one. This year, we will welcome nearly 15,000 new citizens during 65 Independence Day naturalization ceremonies across the country. Upon taking the oath of allegiance, you joined an esteemed group of contributors to our society who also chose to make the United States their adoptive home. Contributors such as Madeleine Albright, our first female Secretary of State, and Albert Einstein, the Nobel Prize winning scientist. the men and women of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and the Department of Homeland Security share in the joy of your sense of pride and personal triumph. I wish you all the best in living and achieving your own American dream. Congratulations once again. Now, please join me in welcoming Mark Krikorian, Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies, as he delivers congratulatory remarks.
Thank you, Kim. Congratulations, Americans. You've come a long way since you first got here. Whether you came here by foot or by bus, on a ship or an airplane, you arrived here as strangers. Many of you didn't know the language. Some of you didn't have any friends or family here. And all of you were at least a little bit nervous about starting a new life in a new country. Back in the 1600s, when George Washington's great-grandfather, John Washington, crossed the ocean to come here, newcomers who lived through the first year here, who survived the diseases and insects of the New World, were considered seasoned. That's the word they used. And they figured that having made it through the first year, they were likely to survive and build a new life for themselves. Now, dangerous disease isn't the problem it once was here, though Lord knows the bugs are bad enough. New immigrants still have a lot to learn when they get here, and can have some awkward and embarrassing experiences while they're getting to learning the ropes. My grandfather, for instance, Vahram Marukian was his name, he came to this country as a teenager before World War I. He came to Boston, and he had a relative outside the city he was supposed to join. And the relative told him to go to the train station and take the car to their town, the streetcar or train car. But this relative of his, like many of you probably, was already using English words when he was speaking Armenian. You speak Armenian and put English words in them. My grandfather didn't know any English. And so he heard the word car, which in Armenian means a rock or a stone. So somehow he found his way to his relative's house, knocked on the door, and said, "Here's the rock. What's it for?" Those kind of problems are behind you now. You've learned how to find an apartment and file a tax return and open a bank account. But as comfortable as you've been living in America up to now, until just a minute ago, you weren't Americans. When you had breakfast this morning, you were Romanian or Filipino or Ghanaian or Peruvian, but you'll have lunch as Americans. Not many countries in the world allow that sort of thing. After all, an Irishman can't move to China and become Chinese. A Mexican can't become a Nigerian. And yet each of you, from whatever country, has now become an American as good as any other. This matter of taking American citizenship, of becoming part of the American people, isn't like buying a new set of clothes or a new car. It's a permanent and very serious thing you've done, more like getting married or starting a family. In the Jewish faith, there's this idea that a person who converts, who joins that faith, is considered to have been present in spirit when Moses presented the Ten Commandments 4,000 years ago, even though that person's ancestors weren't there. In a non-religious version of that same idea, now that you've taken your oath of citizenship, you become present in spirit, along with all other Americans, at defining events of our own nation's history. The Indian immigrant, for instance, who just became an American this morning, was present in spirit when George Washington signed the Constitution in Philadelphia in 1787, even though that person's immigrants not only weren't in the room, they weren't even in the country at the time. The Salvadoran immigrant who became an American this morning was present in spirit at the Battle of Gettysburg, where our Union was saved 156 years ago yesterday, even though her own ancestors, like mine, were not among the soldiers on that battlefield. The Romanian immigrant who became an American today was present in spirit at Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech in 1963, even though his ancestors weren't here either. You've now been adopted into America's family. This family isn't just tied by blood relations, but also by common ideals, a common language, a common history, a common culture of many parts, what Abraham Lincoln called the mystic chords of memory. This history is now your history as well. We welcome you as our newest countrymen. We entrust part of our nation's future to you. We ask only that you love America, cherish America, honor her, protect her, embrace her, salute her, hold her dear. God bless you. God bless America.
Thank you, Mark, for your words. It is now my pleasure to introduce J.M. Henn, Vice President of the George Washington Chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution. He's going to be leading us all in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. So everyone, please rise.
Thank you, Ms. Zanotti, and good morning, everyone. My name is Jay Henn, and I am the Vice President of the George Washington Chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution. I would like to offer my congratulations on behalf of our chapter and our society to all of today's new American citizens. We are so pleased to be a part of this special program. I have the distinct pleasure to lead us as we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. At this time, and as your first act as a United States citizen, we will say the pledge together. Unlike the oath, we will be placing our right hand over our heart and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance in unison. Ladies and gentlemen, please face the flag, place your hand over your heart, and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Jay. Ladies and gentlemen, my new fellow countrymen, please allow me to offer my personal congratulations to you and offer you a very special treat. The great American historian of war is here to give some thoughts on the birthday of our country. He is Rick Atkinson, three-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize, both for journalism and history. His famous Liberation trilogy is a masterful telling of the American war effort in the European theater during World War II, which helped defeat fascism. And now he has turned his formidable talents to explaining the fight that created American independence with a new trilogy, the first book of which, The British Are Coming, captures in dramatic fashion the sacrifices and perseverance which set our nation on its path of independence, and explores that time when George Washington learned the difficult art of leadership when the war seemed all but lost. Directly following the ceremony in our gift shop, Rick will be visiting with guests and signing books, and I encourage everyone here to stop by and purchase what will be the finest history of the American Revolution written in our lifetimes. Please welcome Rick Atkinson.
Thank you for that, Doug. Welcome to you new Americans and your families and your friends on an extraordinary day, not only the 243rd birthday of the United States of America, but also the day that you have formally become citizens of the same United States. It's a tremendous honor to be with you and to speak briefly, I know it's very hot, as it should be on the 4th of July, to tell you how proud your new country is of you, how important you are to us, and how grateful we are that you have chosen to cast your fates with ours. Today, you affirm our common allegiance not only to a country, but to an idea. We need your help. We need your determination, your ingenuity, and your wisdom, so that together we can make this a more perfect union for our children, for our grandchildren, and for the generations to come. We're privileged to be here at Mount Vernon, the beautiful estate that was the home of George and Martha Washington for more than 40 years. It's among the most famous places in America. I know, I'm really boring, but it'll be over soon. This is a place of pilgrimage. Since the Mount Vernon Ladies Association bought the estate, revived it, and opened it to the public in the mid-19th century, as Doug mentioned, some 85 million people have visited. Often they're trying to learn who they are, who we are, because Mount Vernon embodies not only many of the ideals that the country stands for and that was founded on in 1776, but many of the challenges that the country's faced in almost 2.5 centuries. Let's remember that when George Washington died in this house, in the bedroom right over there in 1799, there were more than 300 slaves held in bondage on this estate. There was work to be done. He'd done a lot as a general, as president, and as a citizen to give the United States a firm foundation and a good start in life. But there was no guarantee that this experimental nation would endure, much less thrive as a sprawling continental republic founded on democratic ideals and an assertion that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It helps to remember that when those fine words were written in the Declaration of Independence in 1776, it was in fact aspirational. It was not literally true in 1776 that all men are created equal, because that did not apply to 500,000 enslaved blacks, 1 in 5 of all souls who lived in the 13 colonies at the time. Nor did it apply to Native Americans, to women, or to indigents. Yeah, there sure was a lot of work to be done. And look how far we've come in 243 years in diversity and tolerance and scale, and in making that fantasy phrase the law of the land. But there's still work to be done. Since we're here in the man's yard, let's spend a moment acknowledging Washington. I know him best as a general. In the spring of 1775, he left this place to serve first in Congress in Philadelphia and then to take command of the new Continental Army outside Boston for what would be an 8-year insurrection against the greatest military power on earth, Great Britain. In those 8 years, Washington returned home to Mount Vernon only once, and then only briefly. For him, it was like being in exile from the place he loved most on earth, and a sensation that I suspect some of you have experienced. Those 8 years of war were years of hardship, of heartbreak, of calamity, an occasional triumph. He was tested in a way that he could never have imagined. And sometimes he failed. Sometimes he wasn't an especially good battlefield commander. Sometimes he depended on people who weren't dependable. In 1776, we find him grumbling about his troops, his officers, and his lot in life. I distrust everything. That's George Washington. And that carping transforms our demigod into a cranky mortal. But those same 8 years helped to make him the man we revere today, not only because he was the winning general on the winning side in the war, but because he demonstrated the character required for an impossible job and refined the traits that would be needed for his next impossible job as our first president. As General Washington, he'd been willing to listen to advice, to learn from his mistakes. He was a gifted political general, matched in American history probably only by Dwight Eisenhower 170 years later. We're not talking about partisan politics, of course, but rather political in the sense of intuitively knowing how to motivate both subordinates and superiors, how to maneuver, how to compromise. Part of being an exceptional political general is an ability to make allies and to cultivate foreign allies. Among Washington's sternest commands in the summer of 1775 was, be tolerant. Don't insult Canadian Catholics, even if you New Englanders have hated them for 150 years. We need them. We have critical relationships. And he will have critical relationships with foreign allies before the war is over. Lafayette, von Steuben, Rochambeau, Pulaski, and many others, some of whom will choose to become Americans. An important part of his job is nurturing those relationships. Great responsibility enlarges him. We can't ask for more from our national leaders. He rightly embodies the sacrifice of personal interest to a greater good, as well as other Republican virtues, small r. Dignity, modesty, determination, moral stamina, incorruptibility. Traits that should remain true north for every citizen today. Of course he had insecurities, and he was ambitious, and he was preoccupied with his reputation. But his faith gave others faith. His strength gave others strength. And finally, he developed a shrewd understanding of the ornery, independent peoples known collectively as Americans. In January 1777, Washington wrote, "A people unused to restraint must be led. They will not be drove." He was a leader, and how lucky we are. As you know, we've long called him the father of our country. That means we're all his children, all 329 million of us, whether your people arrived here in 1610 or in 2010. The poet and former Librarian of Congress, Archibald MacLeish, wrote some years ago that democracy is never a thing done. It's something a people must always be doing, something a nation must always be doing. This remains our common task, our sacred duty, the tie that binds us to the generations that came before us and to the generations still unborn. For those of you who today join this sprawling, sometimes difficult, often wonderful American family, we welcome you. We want you. We need you. Because democracy is always something a nation must be doing. Congratulations. I wish you life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Well, I would like to now introduce a very special person who would like to add his own congratulations on this wonderful holiday we are celebrating today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome General George Washington.
Well, good day to you all. Forgive me, good sir, your comments were illuminating. They were edifying. I praise you as highly as I can, but I will tell you that I believe your reports about my death are premature. Welcome to my home on this twice special day, the celebration of the birth of this nation and the day that all of you became citizens of the United States of America. You know, my great-grandfather, John Washington, he was an immigrant to this land. And like you, he came to this continent to make a better life. And with the blessings of our nation, you will do just that. There is, however, a price that must be paid by all of America's citizens, because the great and good gifts of freedom and liberty given to all of us here by a divine providence are not free gifts. They carry deep responsibilities. This democratical republic requires that its citizens be active and be informed so that the nation can flourish and prosper, and so it should. Our nation, I believe, has the good wishes of all freedom-loving people in all nations, and I believe that they look upon the United States of America as a kind of model for mankind. God grant that we may not disappoint their honest expectations by our folly or perverseness. I ask each of you, through the active and informed exercise of your virtue, moderation, and patriotism, which marked the steps of the American people in framing, adopting, and raising up this nation in the beginning, to continue to act in a manner that will make your family, your community, and your new country proud of you, and to contribute to the beacon light of America that shines forth upon a difficult world. I welcome each of you as fellow citizens of this great and beloved country. I said before that this is a twice special day. How truly remarkable, all but a miracle, was the raising of these United States. I wish you could have been there. On July 4th, 1776, I was in New York, fighting the war that would ultimately be necessary to secure our freedoms. But on that day, a group of men in Philadelphia pledged their property, all that they owned, their sacred honor, and indeed their very lives, to the glorious cause of independence. A moment ago, I said it was all but a miracle. Think on it. When we declared our American independency, and then again when we signed our Constitution, we were the only nation on earth. I want to say that again so you understand. We were the only country on this planet that was not under the control of men and women of absolute power. Every other country, kings, queens, lords, ladies, sheiks, viziers, caliphs, potentates, maharajas, mikados, emperors, even a tsarina, I ran out of fingers. We alone, for the first time in human history, raised up a nation based on ideas and constrained by laws, our Constitution. You are now governed by those laws. You are part of an unbroken and strong line of Americans that goes back to this day 243 years ago, the day of American independency. It is my fervent prayer that the author of all life will bless this country and its people, including its newest citizens, that Providence will bless our struggles, cultivate in our citizens a spirit in support of liberty, freedom, and the deep responsibilities that accompany these gifts, that the Almighty will create in us a brotherly affection, one for another, and for our fellow citizens at large. And finally, that each and every one of us will be most graciously pleased to do justice to all. I remain your humble and your obedient servant. Thank you.
All right, well, now is the time where we'll be handing out the certificates. So Victoria is going to return to the podium, and she's going to be calling the candidates by name. We will form a receiving line so that we can shake your hand. So let's welcome her back to the podium.
You are to this way. All right. Ruth Doris Recabado Gomez Garcia. Arifa Esau. Mahai Bival. Thank you. Yufeng Zhao. John Sam. Rafael Antonio Villa Quevedo. Timothy Sam. Lara Ramani, Michelle Kamal Ayub Kela.
Congratulations.
Melina Pari Katunta.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yojeshi Sitaram Sawant.
Congratulations.
Sonji Han.
Congratulations.
Mary Carola.
Congratulations.
Dolores Amedia Rivera.
Congratulations.
Omar Antonio Guevara.
Congratulations.
Alami Goral.
Congratulations.
Doreen George Mihak.
Congratulations.
Ariel Taran Tapia.
Congratulations.
Madhu Adley Halabi Bashay.
Congratulations.
Prajwal Kamarcharya.
Congratulations.
Gemma Aranzu Aliman.
Congratulations.
Delphi Manuel.
Congratulations. Make sure it's yours.
Thank you, yeah.
Antonio Josue Sanchez Escalona.
Congratulations.
Stanley Amoko.
Congratulations.
Linda Mayos.
Congratulations.
Reina Neris Reyes de Cruz.
Congratulations.
Amnia Ibrahim Ahmed Hamarouche. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Juan Kong Vo.
Congratulations.
Manjulaban Hashdal.
Congratulations. Thank you so much. Don't lose it.
Swati Daraj Gadam. Renee Vanessa Camp.
Congratulations.
Saral Kumar Barua.
Congratulations. I love the scarf.
Zerun Zewu Tijan.
Congratulations.
Samuel Adamu.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Venkata Krishna Rao Bihara.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Honora Ahmed Genova. Alisha Ahmed Janov.
Careful going down the stairs there.
Adi Kel Ryan.
Congratulations.
Ubenaldo Ramos Velasquez.
Thank you so much. Congratulations, sir. Well done.
Sion Min No. Muhammad Ali Hamatian.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Congratulations.
Aneljeet Singh Sahota.
Congratulations.
Avinash Marama.
Congratulations.
Yu Kwong Lu.
Congratulations.
Sonia Melba Danire Ribeiro. Pratika Chandramani. Yes.
Congratulations.
Well done. Congratulations.
No, we just have one thing.
Dr. Lee? I'll do it. Okay, great.
So yes, let's have one round of applause for America's newest citizens. I want to thank everyone for being here today. And as we celebrate America's birthday and our founding fathers' indelible impact on our great nation, we hope that everyone will take time to enjoy a tour of the mansion and take time to explore the rest of this great site. I would like to now invite Jessica Lynn back to close us with a singing of God Bless America. Enjoy the rest of your day. Happy 4th of July, and congratulations, new Americans.